Black Africans seen as a threat. There is overwhelming evidence that young black men are stereotyped as violent, criminal, and dangerous. Indeed, research suggests that black men are associated with threat both implicitly as well as explicitly. In this video, we will share with you why black Africans are seen as a threat. What crimes have they done, which makes them a villain, and apart from this, we will know how to stop this from getting worse. Because they are so readily appraised as threatening, furthermore, black men are more likely to be shot erroneously and are often misperceived, suspected, automatically evaluated, and misremembered as aggressors. The results of recent research using cognitive neuroscience methodology also support the idea that most social perceivers consistently associate black men with threats. The amygdala, a part of the brain selectively responsive to the perceived threat, showed different activity in this study in response to black, as opposed to white male targets, especially in white people with relatively high levels of implicit racial attitude bias. These distinct amygdala activity patterns are thought to represent fairly automatic threat reactions to targets who are black men. This work suggests that black men are quickly and easily perceived as threatening when taken into account alongside the behavioral research reviewed previously. Studies have repeatedly discovered evidence of racism in the United States. Researchers tested 176 mostly white male police officers to see if they had unconscious dehumanization bias against black people by asking them to match pictures of people with pictures of big cats or apes as part of a study that was published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology in 2014. Researchers found that when 264 mostly white female college students were surveyed for the same study, they tended to view black children and young adults as significantly less innocent than their white counterparts. As you may recall, the goal of the current study was to determine whether the association between black men and threat would lead to biased patterns of selective attention, whereby black male targets would draw white social perceivers' attention more than white male targets. As was previously mentioned, an abundance of research has shown that biologically threatening stimuli like snakes and spiders are attention-grabbing. However, social threats can also draw people's attention more readily. For instance, compared to happy or neutral faces, angry faces are frequently processed quicker and more effectively. Similar to this, women who are uneasy in their romantic relationships show a strong attentional bias toward attractive female targets, but not male ones. This is probably because attractive women are seen as potential competitors and therefore pose a threat. This work predicts that young black men will also garner attention to the extent that they are perceived as threatening. Ito and Yerlin, for example, exposed primarily white participants to images of black and white males and monitored ERP activity as they either made race-neutral judgments Phase 1 or participated in an explicit racial categorization task Phase 2. The findings showed that black male targets evoked a larger positive-going ERP component, which was detected 200 ms after the stimulus and has been found to respond differently to threatening images like vicious dogs. When participants were performing the explicit racial categorization task, different P200 activity to black faces was especially noticeable. Subsequent research showed that the size of participants' P200 difference predicted a tendency to shoot unarmed black male targets more frequently than unarmed white male targets. In other words, Ito and colleague studies suggest that black men may indeed attract attention, which is consistent with the predictions of the present work. It is crucial to remember that although the studies by Ito and colleagues are suggestive, they were all carried out in settings where either race or danger were highlighted. The target face on which the ERP was time-locked, for example, was embedded in a series of trials of either all faces of the same race or all faces of different races, raising the salience of race as a factor under consideration. In another study, participants took part in Correll and colleagues' shooter bias task, which involves presenting participants with both armed and unarmed black and white male targets and asking them to shoot the armed targets. In other words, the task itself presents a chance for black men to be associated with danger. Given these methodological issues, it is still not clear if the link between young black men and danger is strong enough to influence early components of attention in a situation where neither race nor danger are highlighted. This question was the focus of the current research. Although previous research on height has only looked at white men, it appears that height is advantageous for men in terms of earning and success. Height may be more costly for black men than advantageous, primarily denoting threat rather than competence. The disadvantages of height in black men are revealed by 3 studies. Tall black men are more likely than shorter black men to experience unwarranted police attention, according to Study 1's analysis of over 1 million stop and frisk interactions with the New York Police Department. Then, Studies 2 and 3 experimentally show a causal relationship between perceived height and perceived threat for black men, especially for perceivers who support the stereotype that black people are more threatening than white people. Together, these findings show that height can be a disadvantage for black men, especially in situations where threat is obvious. When writing about Eric Garner, an unarmed man who was choked to death by police, Charles Coleman Jr. recalled his mother's advice. Garner was 6 feet 3 inches tall and of black descent. Coleman emphasizes the dangers of occupying a black body that is inherently threatening, contending that police officers pay tall black men disproportionate attention. The black brute archetype, which depicts black men as ape-like savages who use their intimidating physical stature to threaten others, is invoked by this argument. Tall black men may be seen as particularly threatening, even though black men generally face stereotypes of aggression and threat. The notion that height has adverse effects is in contrast to earlier psychological research on height in men, which maintains that being taller is preferable. According to research, tall men appear to be physically more attractive, smarter, more successful, and healthier. Additionally, tall men are more likely to be hired, earn more money, get promoted, and take on leadership roles. However, since white men are already positively stereotyped as capable and intelligent, this research focuses almost entirely on how people perceive them. Black men, on the other hand, suffer from negative stereotypes. They are connected to guns and perceived as being hostile, aggressive, and threatening. Height may be more frequently interpreted by black men as a sign of threat than of competence. Thus, it's possible that being tall is neither good nor bad for men by nature. Instead, how people perceive height may depend on the accessibility of other traits, like competence and threat. Traditional social psychology research demonstrates similar outcomes. The initial description of a target as warm or cold affects how people perceive the target's other characteristics. Numerous studies show that black men are particularly stereotyped as being physically intimidating and imposing. Because of this, taller black men may be perceived as posing a greater threat than taller white men. There is proof that the criminal stereotype of African Americans has been internalized by American society. For instance, in experiments where the same act is performed by African Americans and white people, participants have stated that the black figure is more threatening than the white figure. In the same way, respondents in surveys that ask about respondents' fear of strangers in make-believe situations are more afraid of being victimized by black strangers than by white strangers. That's all for today's video. Like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this.